Hello, everybody. We're thrilled to have you joining us. We'll just give another 30 or 60 seconds for those who are not yet on to join successfully, and then we will get started with this conversation with Ryan Allenbach and Brooke Pulsipher. So just give us about 60 seconds. Thank you. Okay, thank you, everybody. Welcome to our conversation about reclaiming significant time, 80 to 100 hours, in your next SOX engagement using the playbook of top co sourcing managers. My name is Brian Henderson. I'm just moderating the conversation today. We're thrilled to have you join us. The webinar today will be hosted by Ryan Allenbach and Brooke Pulsipher. They will have a conversation about what's working in this environment and with this tool, and then we'll make sure that we have time for Q&A after their conversation. So be ready with your questions. You're welcome to put them into the chat at any time during the conversation, and I can jump in when appropriate and have them answer your questions. And we can also reserve that for the Q&A portion of our conversation. By way of introduction, Ryan Allenbach, is the founder of Agreed, a co-sourcing engagement platform built for SOX audit consulting teams. Prior to founding Agreed, Ryan spent over a decade in management consulting, including roles at Accenture and leading business transformation engagements across finance, operations, and technology. Brooke Pulsipher is an associate director at Protiviti with nearly a decade of experience in SOX compliance and internal audit. She specializes in working with pre-IPO and newly public companies navigating SOX requirements, which is why I'm sure those of you who are with us today are on the call. So without further ado, I'll go ahead and turn the time over to Ryan.
Thanks, Brian, and welcome everybody to the webinar. We're excited for the conversation today. I'm delighted to be joined by Brooke. Hey, Brooke, how you been?
Hey, I'm good. How have you been?
Doing well. So we're together today to talk about the co-sourcing SOX landscape, but I'd maybe love to hear a little bit more from you. I know the intro about how long you've been at Protiviti, what you've been up to. Why don't you talk about some of the clients you work on and the spectrum of GRC tools that you've been working with your clients?
Of course, happy to. I work with a variety of clients in lots of different industries, from healthcare to manufacturing and distribution. And our audit setup also runs a wide gamut from full GRC running very smoothly to everything done in spreadsheet and Excel. And it really depends on the client environment, what we inherit. So I am used to being flexible, and I see, yeah, the whole range of how an audit can be run.
Awesome. Well, today, the folks who are joining, if you're managing multiple SOX engagements at once, you know the real problem. It's chasing PBC requests. It is trying to maintain visibility. So, what we're going to talk about is maybe setting the context and setting the stage of these uh, two ends of the spectrum. Maybe we talk about kind of the old school world, the spreadsheets versus the GRC. And thank you, AI, for generating the fun graphics throughout the presentation. But maybe talk, help me understand from your perspective in the many clients that you've been through, kind of what is that overall team sentiment when the client is really humming on a GRC? Like, what does that feel like? How does that impact morale and everything? Just set me in that context.
Yeah, of course. I would say it is just like smooth sailing when there is an established GRC. The client, us, and as internal audit and external audit are all on the same page and have the same visibility into controls that are completed, support that is ready, approvals that are already in the system. There is no communication lag. We all have real live updates into how the audit is running. So any touch point calls we have, there is no catch up to be had. We're all coming to the table with the same information and our time is used really efficiently. It's great. The like uptime to get your audit requests in is very low because you are just plugging along with that established GRC.
Got it. Okay. Now, obviously, we've talked about the other end of the spectrum where clients haven't embraced, we'll say, the digital dominance of this blue phone on the right side,
Yeah.
and they're fighting the battle with this old school email and spreadsheets. I want you to take a minute and describe what that looks like and what that feels like. How does the team react when you learn that the client has is going in that direction?
I would say initial team reaction is disappointment and maybe even a bit defeated, going back to like, oh, we've done it before, we can do it again. But when you see how smoothly something can be run and you have a client without a GRC and you know everything will be manual, all your requests will be sent via email and everything will be housed in Excel spreadsheets. And you'll get responses on some of your requests, and then you will need to manually update your spreadsheet for what is still outstanding. You run the risk of missing an email from the hundreds of emails that we all get. So it's very clunky. And as far as communication goes, it's often you feel like three disparate teams. So client, internal audit, external audit. You're all waiting on something from the other. There's no seamless interaction. It is all manual, and we're all busy. So you run the risk of forgetting something, missing those emails, not setting up those touch points. For example, it's everyone knows it is going to take a lot more effort in a non-GRC environment.
Yeah, I'm gonna talk about two things. So, um, as we've talked before, those hidden costs, right? That friction between diving into the emails, making sure that spreadsheet is updated. I mean, in talking through this, it's 80 to 100 hours that we've earmarked. And as you think about the cycles of gathering PBCs, once you've done it, but when you're dealing with clients that are new to this world, that's exacerbating the problem. Having worked in a variety of consulting engagements where, of course, consultants want to meet clients where they're at. We want to help them. Uh, we're helpful and trying to get the work done. We become hostages when clients pick those old school processes. So, when you think about whether it's your own experience you've seen or heard through the years, obviously keeping client names anonymous, I'm curious from your perspective, what are like the most recent or like the most painful, those scar examples when things have just kind of gone off the rails because of the context that you're operating in, that spreadsheet and email world?
Yeah, absolutely. Unfortunately, I have a lot I could share. I'll pick a couple. I heard of a client that went over $100,000 over budget because of a missed section of the audit that was just like lost in email and Excel. Someone had left company and it just kind of fell through the cracks until the 11th hour, and the push to get that complete ran the project over $100,000 over budget, literally 2 months before the audit was set to end. So they weren't happy. The client wasn't happy. I don't think it cost the client relationship, but I don't think it would be out of the question if it had. I personally have felt the friction of when someone leaves a company, whether at the client or from my own internal audit team. And when you're in this spreadsheet email uh, world, a lot of knowledge is lost. And so when someone leaves and they have that expertise, you are playing catch up and scrambling, and that puts you behind budget as well. Um, I would also say that it, any opportunity to scale the audit or look for opportunities of improvement are really limited because you are spending the time in such a manual environment. You don't have the time, the money, or the resources to think about what could we be doing better, what could we be doing different, whether what other opportunities are there. You just don't have that luxury. You're kind of stuck in same as last year because that's all we have time for.
Yeah, it's painful. I'm curious when you share the budget overruns, what's the internal reaction? What are you having to navigate with your peers, with your superiors, with internal finance, etc.?
Yeah, well, it's a gut punch for sure when you first hear of a budget overrun, especially to that extent. And then it's a lot of internal conversations. How did this happen? What did we miss? What is the root cause of why are we going over? And then it's how do you spin it to whoever you're working with? How do you explain this oversight? And those are not comfortable conversations. They're not fun. I hate having them. So when they happen, it's just your stomach drops for sure.
Yeah, for our participants, I'd love for you to think about those visceral moments in your own lives that you've heard from your peers and colleagues. And if that PTSD trigger just happened and you want to drop it in the chat, we'd love to commiserate together. But this isn't about all bad things, right? We're talking about the realities of working in an environment that we can't control as consultants. We want to support our clients where they're at, and that's what consultants become really good at. So as we think about this, this binary world that we live in, it is going with what feels free, right? We've got spreadsheets and email that everyone knows how to use that are infinitely customizable and ready for virtually all participants to drop in and engage with immediately. And on the other end of the spectrum, we've got all the bells and whistles that you can imagine. These GRCs can automate, they can accelerate, they can collapse timelines, they draw immediate visibility. So this kind of binary choice that we're setting up, my big question is like, why don't all the clients just rush out to adopt a GRC? And what kind of hurdles are people facing in this choice?
One is absolutely the upfront cost of a GRC when you're going from, like you said, a quote unquote free model to a full GRC implementation. That upfront cost causes a lot of sticker shock. And then you have the cost of getting it up and running, getting everything implemented. So there is further cost and hours that go into setting up your GRC and getting everybody just used to a new system. A lot of times the perspective is, well, we've been successful on the free model and it's worked. So why change given these, quite significant hurdles that are perceived?
Yeah, I was talking with a managing director at a kind of full capability suite multinational consulting firm recently who is responsible for pre-IPO clients. And and one of the things that he mentioned is pre-IPO clients that are new to SOX, they don't often have all the processes hardened or mature enough that going with a full-blown system that is going to document and be customized to that process, it feels like it's rushing into that or it's premature. What's your reaction to that? Or how would you, if you're a pre-IPO client or kind of year 1 through 3. How do you navigate that?
A great point. I mean, SOX itself pre-IPO is a hurdle. So when you add in this complex tool, when people are just doing their best to understand the basic requirements of this new public company world, it is just overwhelming. And it's often we don't need all of the features that come with that. We just need something to like manage our SOX environment, really. And so it's often just too overwhelming for a pre-IPO client to then add this new tool that they have to learn the functionality coupled with getting their legs under them in the new SOX environment.
Yeah, it's interesting to empathize as consultants that go through this process day in and day out, what it's like going through in the early years and just becoming comfortable in this new environment. Um, so, Brooke, you and I have known each other for years now. The I really want to double click on the context of our relationship, right?
Yeah.
We got introduced, and maybe if you want to talk about the context of our first engagement together, what the client was going for, and then maybe how the client actually pulled us in this direction to uncover a new option.
Yeah, absolutely. So Ryan and I first met when I had a client looking for a platform to manage their enterprise risk management solution. A lot of it had been similar to what we've been saying for SOX, managed in spreadsheets and email, PowerPoint presentations, and that lived with internal audit. So management had to come to us and ask lots of questions about, how was this risk rated? What do we have as far as mitigating controls and activities? So Ryan and I set up Agreed for this client, and it has been great. I think they're on their second or third contract renewal. It has been a game changer for enterprise risk management because it has moved the onus of ownership from internal audit to the risk owners, and it allows the visibility to the C-suite of how their risk is managed. So that has been great. We had wonderful experience setting this up for enterprise risk management for the client, and they are a longstanding client for us, very much in the field. So when we were thinking of how can we streamline some of these SOX requests we were receiving, their IT director said, well, we already have Agreed. Is this something that we could utilize? So Ryan and I got together and kind of brainstormed how we could use a software they had already used and been familiar with to bring in this SOX engagement piece as well.
Yeah, I'm going to share a couple of thoughts. Um, when we think about taking a client from that spreadsheet, low visibility, low accountability world, what was transformative from my perspective was seeing how the conversation dynamic between you and the CFO was elevated. You weren't spending as much time chasing these open requests or digging into the email to find the latest feedback or status. It changed from an administrative relationship to a more strategic relationship.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
when you think about the time savings and what that actually means for you and for your team, I know at the time you were closer as a manager or senior manager, now director or associate director. Um, how does it impact those roles that are really day in and day out with the client trying to think about that PBC request motion?
Oh, it frees up so much time to, like you said, really enhance the relationship you have with the client. It goes from being transactional, I need this, okay, I sent it to you, well, I'm still missing this, just that back and forth to you have time to ask, okay, what else is going on in your life? What else is happening at the business? So it opens doors that way, but also frees up a lot of that administrative time internally of not having to chase down PBCs because similar to a GRC, everyone has the same visibility into what's been provided, what hasn't, what's the status of the audit. It just it kind of removes the shackles, I guess, of a traditional manual environment.
Yeah, I love it. I'm going to double click on this image because in our day and age, you are penalized or at least questioned if you're not thinking about the most tech savvy solution or the cutting edge solution. And in a binary world, getting clients to take a baby step towards a more efficient world is really an opportunity for an outsized win. The flip phone as embodying this like baby step of using the agreed platform for SOX and co-sourcing. This collaboration layer is really interesting because it's just enough technology where client and consultant feedback, it's really a win-win. Everybody is saving time on the process. We're reducing a lot of friction in the process. So maybe if you can talk about just right for new to SOX or for non-GRC, what does that mean for them? Is there thinking about decisions that aren't locking them in? What does that look like and feel like from your perspective?
Yeah, definitely. It really is just fits that gap that you illustrated between the binary that we've been living in. Because often, as we've said, pre-IPO, newly public, they are not looking for a full GRC suite. And even I have some existing public companies who have been public for years that just aren't interested. So this fills that sweet spot to enhance it just that right amount to get you those efficiencies without the overwhelm that can come from a GRC. So initially, I was curious how it would function in a SOX engagement. What would the setup time be like? How would we see those efficiencies gain momentum? Would the client be receptive to hearing about this new tool, a new option that they hadn't known about, considered, hasn't really existed yet, to be honest? And I've been very pleased to see that it is received very well. And I think clients can recognize that it does fill that sweet spot. And when we outline the pain points that we have explained on this call, the the appeal of Agreed as a SOX tool is really apparent.
Thanks, Brooke, for your candor and just sharing about, the genuine question and curiosity. How is it going to be received? What kind of friction or concerns? Obviously, you've got to manage that you're a consultant, you're not a vendor. You're trying to maintain professional focus on the objective. So, the outset of the call, putting a stake in the ground that we're going to help our listeners and participants learn how to save 80 to 100 hours on their next SOX engagement. What we want to talk about is the playbook, right? We're asserting that there is a door number three, that it's not a binary world as it has been. And think about, what are the steps that anybody, but especially a fully outsourced or a co-sourced relationship might look like from an internal audit perspective. And so, a handful of things that we want to talk about. Um, we'll begin with identifying like what are the opportunities that are in your client portfolio right now that may be a good fit. So, co-sourcing clients, if it's a SOX early to the game, kind of a year one, two, three, if they have previously said no to using a GRC, that is a really tough situation. Like you said, Brooke, how the team feels demoralized or, it's disappointing to work. If they've said no, it was probably exciting to have them consider that GRC. Well, if they've made the decision that they're not going to make the upfront investment, there is an opportunity to still capture a significant amount of value and gains for both consulting team and client. The second part of the playbook is how do you position a tool that they don't have brand recognition, it is new to the market, and really how we've talked in the past is this collaboration layer that is about saving time and reducing headache, right? If you think about the people who are going to feel the pain the most of a delayed SOX compliance motion or PBCs that are behind, that is certainly the CFO. It's going to surface to the board that's going to be feeling it, but it trickles down to a lot of other folks in the organization. If you can talk for a little bit, Brooke, about when you're having conversations with clients and introducing Agreed, what does that look like or feel like? And who are you having the conversations with?
It's often the CFO or the controller. They're a little bit removed sometimes from the day-to-day SOX requirements, not as tapped into that. So it's really outlining how things are running now and how we think Agreed can be helpful. And I've found it's really an honest conversation with no agenda, I suppose, just a genuine desire to make things more efficient. I have a client right now, an example I forgot to share earlier, that we are 2 months behind on the engagement because of the manual tracking and emails that just slip through the cracks, both for us and the client. And now we're 2 months behind, and you have to deal with staffing, and then the client is also busy. And I think that really highlights the pain points that come from tracking everything manually. So sharing examples like that of an option like Agreed would allow visibility for all parties and let us all see real time, oh, this request has been outstanding for 2, 3 weeks. Let's follow up on that. They'll be able to see that it's not something that internal audit has to communicate. We're all on the same page. So it's really positioning Agreed, like you said, no brand recognition, but this honest reaction that I have of this will help us collaborate and this will help us be team players rather than this transactional information exchange. We can work together to get this audit where it needs to be.
Yeah, I love that anchor because in the end, like we're working with people, we're trying to develop a successful motion. If you can have your consulting team, especially if you're in a co-source environment, actually feel like you're on the same team as the client, you're sitting on the same side of the table, it's easier to tackle issues when they arise. It's easier to have more empathy and to have grace in the relationship. And I find that when I'm sitting on the same side of the table as a client, that we're able to tackle problems faster because a lot of the slack and noise is removed from the equation. Let's talk about, I mean, we're midway through December. January is kind of the time for when clients start thinking about this. Um, the playbook, third point, integrate, customize in days. I want to talk about how long it took you the first time that you saw Agreed. And I have a story to tell about Brooke. But I would just want your reaction about what kind of investment is that? Because going into the new year, we're getting ready to sign clients, we're getting ready to extend contracts. How much of a headache might this be to introduce even this kind of with this time frame and lag?
Yeah. My first impression of Agreed years ago was how user friendly it was. I didn't ask for a demo really. I think I just wanted to get in and play around and see if I could figure it out. And it was so simple, and getting all of the data in there was so easy. Once I knew what I was doing in the 5, 10 minutes it took, I was just on a roll. And it was so easy. And honestly, I don't think it was any more of up a lift than setting up those Excel spreadsheets every year for a SOX client. And uh, I, I was very pleasantly surprised how intuitive it was to use the tool.
Yeah, one of the biggest shocks for me in my career was giving you access to the tool. I think a week later, you came back and told me that you built out a fully customized demo for your client and that you gave the demo to the CFO. I was like invited as an optional participant. I think that speaks to the speed that we can transition, and if there really is an opportunity to save 80 to 100 hours for your engagement, depending on obviously bill rates and whatnot, that's a twenty to $25,000 pad to your profit margin on the consulting side, not even taking into account any of the time savings for the client. So, as you think about your relationships with clients, we are looking for strategic partners. We're flexible on the relationship. I think our early days we had a co-investment model where when the client was introduced, because you were both saving, you were jointly investing, and then the client took ownership. But there's a lot of different ways that we can go to market, and the goal is really saving time. So, thinking about some of the questions that we've got and how it comes up, making sure that people understand that the market is bifurcated, that it feels like both ends of the spectrum are, there's strong reasons why companies will use a GRC and get the efficiencies, but also strong reasons of why they stick with those uh, kind of the antique phone, right? This is a familiar process. But Brian, let me hand it over to you for a moment, see if any conversations or questions have come in, and maybe we'll take some Q&A.
Yes, thanks, Ryan. Thank you, Brooke. Let's just start right into some questions that are common about your conversation and the topic at hand, and we'll be sure to blend in questions from our participants as well. How long does it typically take to get agreed set up for a new engagement?
5 hours maximum, I would say. And that is like the most complex environment, I would say. It is very, very easy and very quick.
Thanks. And could you talk a little bit about what the learning curve is like again for clients who are used to Excel and email, et cetera?
Of course. In the live demo that Ryan mentioned when I was first introducing this tool for the first time to a client, I did some of it live. I went in and I showed them this is how you add attachments, this is how you add a new process. And it was very intuitive for everyone as well. I would say the learning curve is very shallow.
Thanks, Brooke. How would you typically split the cost between the consulting firm and the client?
I have split it 50-50 before. And then I've also seen in situations where the client may be a little skeptical, but we are very confident that it will help. And so the pitch is okay, we will invest. We will, like my company, Protiviti, will pay for access to this software. And when you see the value and the broader applicability of it, that then the client is often very willing and um, even excited to continue that partnership with Agreed themselves.
One thing to add too is that if you think about the alternative, the worst case scenario is that we revert back to the spreadsheet and the email motion that we've been using. And we've tried to position it so that we can go right in with your co-sourced or your fully outsourced internal audit motion. So it's intended to be accessible, but appreciate the feedback, Brooke, because it is about being flexible and meeting you where you're at with your clients.
Definitely.
To that point, Ryan, how do you handle clients who are resistant to any new tools, even lightweight ones like this?
Yeah, the reality in any consulting engagement I've ever been in is you're going to have a range of engagement. Often we will paint the senior person as not, they hardly get into their own email sometimes, and so they're not likely to adopt a new system or platform. So we've built it such that the visibility means that Brooke, on behalf of her client, can make updates based on conversations around the water cooler or in-person meetings. And it will show that Brooks made changes on behalf of the client. So it becomes a single source of truth, regardless of who is participating, fingers on keys in the platform, and allows people to work the way that they are, but still gives that single source of truth.
And even if only some stakeholders are using Agreed and others keep emailing, what is that dynamic like?
Yeah, Brooke, I'm curious about your because I know that you've faced that.
Yes, this is definitely a situation I have encountered. And in those cases, it's often just clear communication to the client of I see XYZ individuals really utilizing it. They are in here, they are collaborating, and I'm not seeing as much from these other people. So I am in here on behalf of them. And oftentimes it's the CFO going to knock on their door and say, hey, you need to use this. Like it's great that we have Brooke, but you need to get familiar with the tool as well. So it's again, like we're happy to collaborate and happy to make those changes on behalf of management, like Ryan was saying. But those that do take the time to just get over that very small learning curve do see the benefit of not needing an intermediary to make those changes.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Thank
would
you.
say too, Brian, that that problem is not unique. That problem goes to a GRC rollout as well as remaining in your spreadsheet environment. That some people are just going to work an old-fashioned way, but lowering the barriers and capturing as much of the value as possible without the significant upfront investment is what we're trying to enable by creating door number three or this middle ground option.
Sure. Is Agreed meant to integrate with existing audit management software? How should uh, someone think about that?
Yeah, it's actually intended to be a standalone, right? This is assuming that clients are coming from a spreadsheet and email world, and any information that goes in can be exported as reports or spreadsheets as well. So it can provide some of that input. But Brooke might be better positioned to answer as you've been internal audit working with external auditors, what that process was like and how you've been able to leverage and get some scale there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the benefit of Agreed filling that sweet spot, as we've said, is apparent when you bring it to the client and external audit. So the fact that it is a standalone tool without integration is not really a hurdle that I have seen because your hurdle now is, well, everything's an email and it's very manual, and we're already not on the same page all at the same time. So it being a standalone tool is a benefit because it's a step in the right direction of making you all a cohesive, collaborative team.
And to that point, Brooke, why not? To those who would say, why not just build something custom in SharePoint or use a project management tool like Monday.com? How do you respond to that?
I have tried to use SharePoint. We've tried custom Teams environments. We've tried custom SharePoint folders. And I have yet to have a project where we do not run into issues with file sharing, with folder permissions, with even just ability to access the platform. It is such a headache. And then you resort to, okay, just send it over email. you try to be innovative and then you just revert to the old practice. And I have not encountered that with Agreed. It has been very seamless in terms of getting everybody access and logged in. And I would say the only learning curve is maybe some of the vernacular in Agreed, but once you're used to that, you're just up and running, and yeah, it is a more seamless experience than those other options that you mentioned, Brian.
Thank you. I've
Maybe
got one
just
more.
to add,
Yeah,
maybe
go
just
ahead.
add one thing other, Brian, I don't think it's that you can't. Like Brooke said, you can absolutely build robust or simple tools in the project management or other workflow collaboration tools. I think they offer a lot of benefits and functionality that are helpful. I think the reality is focus. Are they focusing on creating something that is going to help in this specific application? I don't know. Um, so our intent is to share middle ground that we've seen and hopefully help people to extract the benefit and reclaim some of that in their lives.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you. I've got one more question for you, Brooke, and then one more for you, Ryan. Brooke, even if you talked about it a bit in your comments, what would you have done differently on that overrun engagement if you had agreed?
I don't think we would have had an overrun situation to begin with. It was lost in email and like meeting note conversations. If we'd had agreed, we could have set up a section in agreed for this particular segment of the audit, and it wouldn't have fallen through the cracks. And if there had been an overrun, I think we would have seen that coming down the line much sooner than the 11th hour.
That makes sense. Thank you very much. Ryan, last question for you, and then I'll kick it back to you as you answer. If someone wanted to use Agreed for their 2026 engagements, what's the timeline to get it into their contracts?
Yeah, thanks, Brian. I think to get it into the contracts, it's as fast as us meeting and having, I'll offer up a one-on-one demo with you to introduce and explore your client needs and process and kind of map. Happy to offer a team demo because this will naturally go beyond you as the manager, senior manager, associate director. You'll likely get your partner and your analyst or associates on board with setting it up. But from a timeline perspective, we can start quick and easy, or we can go a little bit more involved and create kind of a partnership relationship. But price tag wise, it's easy to be included, as Brooke talked about. It could be covered underneath a technology fee, can be covered often as your firm's investment, right? You know how the nature of your client relationships work. Often you'll be giving, say, $100,000 or a $300,000 value, but you'll charge them, something less. In this case, rather than giving away your services for free, your investment can be viewed as we're going to bring some real tools to bear for the engagement. So, highly confident that getting something into a January contract is doable, and just happy to have a personal conversation to understand specific constraints and timelines.
Thanks, Ryan.
I think with that, we really appreciate anyone making the time today to join Brooke and I. Brooke, special thanks to you for our long-term relationship and for the good work that you're doing with clients at Protiviti. And for any of you who are listening live or on the future recording, connect with Brooke or I here on LinkedIn. Connect with us in person, and we're excited to introduce this door number three between the binary choices of the stale spreadsheet and email life or the fully automated GRC, and know that there's middle ground and hope to reclaim hours in your SOX engagements. So thanks
Yeah.
again, Brooke, and thanks
Thanks,
everyone for
Ryan.
joining.
Thank you, everybody. We'll be following up with you and look forward to continuing on the conversations. Thank you, Ryan, and thank you, Brooke, and we'll talk soon.
Bye-bye.